This is not winter canola. This is spring canola. So it was planted in the spring and it's maturing later than you would expect the winter canola to mature. Now, one of the issues with canola, you can have quite a lot of pest problems. In this case here, we've had fairly heavy infestations of false chinch bug. Now, false chinch bugs are, it takes quite a lot of them to do damage, but they suck a lot of juices out of the plant. And if they congregate in large numbers on the plants, they can do quite a lot of damage. We're going to have a closer look at what that damage looks like. But first, let's see what kind of pressure we've had here. I'm just going to do a couple of sweeps like this. And let's see what we can find here. So here, if you have a look, these are the false chinch bugs. Give you some idea of the numbers we're dealing with. At this point in the crop, they're very dispersed over the plants. And when the crop was in flowering, they were much more concentrated on individual plants. And you could really see just how many of them there are. They're quite small, but when they're large enough numbers, boy, they just dry out the plant. They suck all the juices from the plant. And mixed in here, you can see these are immature harlequin bugs, so a pentatomid and a brown stink bug. Once you see the bugs are adults, as these are, and able to fly, it's very difficult to obtain control. And that's because you know none of these materials last very long, and in fact, you have rapid reimmigration. As long as the plants are attractive, you just keep having more and more of them come in. And that in fact is what happens here. They've had quite an impact on the crop. So we can have a look and we can see some of the damage on the plants. A lot of the pods have failed to fill. The problem here is that twofold. False chinch bugs have a lot of wild hosts that are weeds, primarily the wild mustards. So they have as many as 4 generations a year. So by the time you have an attractive crop in the field, especially in the smaller plots like we have here, they can become a magnet for these insects. And if they have a good, successful first couple of generations, they can build very large populations on the wild mustards. And so that's when, of course, they come in. Now they can cause a problem on other crops as well, including on sorghum, especially around the time that the seed is very soft and trying to fill. They can aggregate in large numbers on sorghum as well. So you can see these leaves here that are still green. All of this you see scarring is a result of these false chinch bugs and pentatomids like this immature harlequin bug. You can see clusters of them all feeding here. And so apparently they're very attracted to these plants and they've scarred. You can see all the scarring of the leaves. And then you have a cluster of the eggs here. See, these will be the eggs of the harlequin bug, not the false chinch bug. They lay their eggs in the soil. Here you've got some more lady beetles. So again, these are Hippodamia convergens, which are very abundant at this time of year because they've all had their first generation in the wheat. So that's a big female. She's a large size. That tells you she got a lot to eat as a larvae. And they will be in here looking to feed on things like the eggs of insects and any aphids that may be trying to style it. It's interesting because it's been a hard sell, winter canola, as an alternative to wheat. It doesn't really stand up to our severe winter weather and early storm conditions in the early spring as well as wheat does. And so things like hail can really take it out. But I think there's another role that we can consider for spring planted canola, and that is as part of a spring cover crop mix. It's really, it can thrive in our conditions and attract a lot of insects and supply flowering resources for pollinators and beneficial species, parasitoids and predators. But also because it hosts aphids, it actually will potentially serve as a nice bridge for food supply for the reproduction of natural enemies between the time the wheat matures and other summer crops get going and are big enough to host herbivores that will attract, and pests that will require control. So in that bridge period, we need crops that will supply resources for the beneficial insects that are coming out of the wheat in very large numbers. And so then they look around and say, well, where do we go? There's nothing out of the ground yet in the way of summer crops. This is where spring cover crops come in. If they're planted perhaps on marginal areas or around the edge of berms and perhaps in the corners of irrigated circles.